Wedding planners if Reddit. What is your best the bride must never know story? Not a wedding planner, but the wedding planner for one of my good friend's wedding went above and beyond. Friend's mother was a horrid woman, very self-centered, narcissistic. The way you feel about Umbridge the first minute into the HP movie, you feel that way into seconds meeting her. She was banned by friend and uninvited a week before the big day. The final straw being her mother was going to wear a wedding dress, not a white dress which is bad enough. No, actual wedding gown, to her daughter's wedding. It was a hell of a week doing everything we could all do to help friend and her soon to be husband relax, enjoy and get that witch out of their heads. Day of wedding. It's beautiful, in a beautiful church. Everything is fantastic. The wedding planner, he was like some magical fairy godfather, just guiding and leading and managing one transition into another flawlessly. If there were hiccups, nobody knew or saw it. He even had set up professional childcare in the church's children room for those there with young ones. The vows ceremony flowed into the reception room. Then the horrid beast showed up, stomping up the hallway, wearing that dress looking like tore up Colfax hooker. She didn't even make it to the reception hallway. The wedding planner jumped her like a Secret Service agent. I don't even know where he came out of. One moment, crazy lady. Next, wedding planner silent ninja strike, hand over her mouth and dragged her out so fast that us maids and the groomsmen didn't have time to even gasp. Bride and groom never found out she got in. They think she was arrested in the church's lot. She probably shouldn't have done what she did, having out of state warrants out for her, and they didn't find out even that much till after their month-long honeymoon, which was probably due to even the rest of friend's family wanting nothing to do with her mother. All of us have continued to recommend him or use his business for own events back in CO since then. He looked batch crazy in the eyes, took it on like a badass and then went about the rest of the day like a pro Disney cast member. Groom here. I forgot the rings. Sent to groomsmen in a taxi. They were handed to the best man with less than a minute to go. At my best friend's wedding we were a little delayed getting introduced to the reception. She thinks it's because they were letting people get seated. Really, her father-in-law was running around setting up their cupcakes because the catering company had to fire an employee on the spot for being high. She still has no idea 2 years later. Not the wedding planner, but maid of honor. The bride's grandfather wasn't there for the ceremony. He got lost after insisting he knew the way and didn't need to follow anyone from the hotel and didn't make it in time. He was there for the reception however, and the bride didn't notice his absence in the audience during the vows. Bride here. At my wedding my maid of honor was responsible for holding my husband's wedding ring until we exchanged them in the ceremony, and the best man was holding mine. I was super distracted goofing around with my dad getting ready to wall up the aisle and didn't think to double check with Ma before we got the show on the road. During the ceremony I'm definitely paying all my attention on my husband and my grandfather, who was officiating the ceremony, and not on my ma or bridesmaids. So I didn't even notice when my husband's aunt popped up behind me and slipped the ring to my ma. Ma played it off really well, and I had no clue she'd forgotten the ring in the room we used to get dressed and ready. Nobody said a word, and would have gotten away with me never knowing had my aunt not been recording the ceremony for me. I noticed about a week later when my aunt posted the video to Facebook that his aunt popped up on the pulpit with everyone. I asked my sister, a bridesmaid, what happened, and she lost it laughing. My poor ma felt horrible she'd forgotten about the ring, but my husband's aunt saved the day when my sister and ma managed to wordlessly communicate what had happened, and she found the ring and got it to us in like 20 seconds. Former wedding planner here. I managed a 5-star hotel's event department and we had high-end clients that would spend up to and far over a minimum of $150,000 for a single day at our property. Even under the most detailed-oriented people, things fall through the cracks. The reality is that most brides, on the day, are somewhat distracted. A lot of issues that would be gargantuan the day before come across as trivial. Unless it is vital to something the bride will see or hear. Don't say a effing word. She doesn't need to know that the name card street table 15 are wrong. Not a wedding planner, but my now ex husband showed up an hour and a half late to our wedding. Turns out the best man had gotten so drunk he passed out in a bar and they couldn't find him. I didn't find out until we got the wedding photos back weeks later. My first wedding as an independent planner I took on because the bride had some major problems with her venue. This was a high-end hotel in a major city, so having these kind of problems should be unexpected. She knows about some of the things they did wrong but not nearly everything. The wedding turned out okay, so I didn't need to tell her things that weren't necessary. She already had enough trouble. I would hate for her to be more upset than she already was. The biggest problem was when she booked the room. She had a new staff member assisting her with the sale. She booked a blackout date, which is a big no-no because most of the staff is on vacation. Then the salesperson assumed that reception style setup was appropriate for a wedding. Reception style means most people would be standing and there would only be drink tables and bars. Banquet style is appropriate for weddings since there are large round tables for everyone to be seated for dinner. So she booked a room that was way too small for all of the guests she had, and there was no staff available on the day. I had them move bars out into the lobby, dessert table into the lobby. I had their head table set up on the dance floor and then broken down for dancing. I rearranged their whole itinerary to fit in the room. It was still too tight. I did tell her that the room was booked inappropriately so that she did know, but the venue was dead set on her not knowing. My biggest problem was how much I had to fight day of the event. The banquet manager was mad that my client was booked on a blackout date, not my fault. She had booked the event prior to me being involved. The banquet manager had all along been trying to make this wedding a disaster to prove herself right. That's why there had been 3 coordinators quit over 9-month period. I went and double checked all their orders before the event and they had the wrong dessert order. Since the wedding was over a holiday, the bakery wasn't even open. I finally understood why they seemed to refuse to have a tasting for the desserts. Also, this couple spent $75,000 on just this venue. If I had to guess, this whole wedding cost $200k. I don't have all their bills, but it's definitely over $150k. Second story is from before I was independent. I had worked for a large venue in a major city that had 5 weddings a night. It was in 2006 when everybody was getting the same David's bridal apple red BS and we had 4 brides in the same dress. This is usually not an issue we would concern ourselves with, but 2 of the brides were major holes, so we did spend the evening trying to keep them apart from all the other brides. That's the problem with being in the wedding business. Somebody will be mad because somebody else is wearing the same mass-produced dress. I went into the wedding business thinking it would be glamorous, and I know a lot of people think that. You're really managing people and their emotions. It's a lot of money to spend on something that's not really tangent. The amount of pressure brides can get from peers and family is insane. Or it's the opposite. The pressure they put on their peers and family, it's just unacceptable. It wasn't this way before bridal TV shows started. Those shows made things exceptionally difficult for me over a 3-year period. Completely changed the game. And no, it is not reality TV. Obligatory not a wedding planner story. When my wife and I got married, we chose a deep winter date. We had a friend make up all the buttonholes and bouquets and pick them up the day before the wedding, as we were getting married in another town. My wife's bouquet was quite large and was in a bucket of water to keep it fresh. We stayed in separate rooms, obviously, in a small hotel in the town, and I left the flowers in the car to ensure they stayed as fresh as possible. Unbeknownst to me at the time, that night was going to be the coldest of the year and plummet to about -12°C. The following morning, my wife had got up early with her party and already gone to the venue to get ready. I got up and got ready, then headed out to the car to drop the necessary flowers off with my father-in-law at the wedding venue before heading to the church. Got to the car, the bucket with her bouquet had frozen solid. I headed up to the venue and got her dad out. Like a champ, he took over and got the wedding planner to find every hairdryer in the place to melt the ice so the bouquet could be used. I left him to it, and when my wife turned up at the church, she looked amazing and was carrying an ice-free, wonderful bouquet. She had no idea there was any problems at all. Was a bridesmaid who was in charge of save the dates, invitations, and anything else involving paper. I designed and handmade their wedding invitations using home devices and DIY hacks. It was pretty complicated to do so on a home printer. I was doing layered printing, so I was very focused on getting the alignments right. About 60 invitation in, I realized that I spelled her name wrong twice. I have known her for over a decade and have witnessed many typos made by strangers. I never thought I'd be one of them. I started over and ate the cost of the mistake. Fortunately, pretty marginal. Not a wedding planner, but one of the groomsmen absolutely had to work that day and didn't make it to the wedding till like 15 minutes beforehand. Oh yeah. He was the one to walk her down the aisle too. So it was an important thing. Not a wedding planner, but my best friend and his now ex-wife had gotten married in January after only being engaged for 3 months. He asked me to be the best man for the wedding. I said totally. That when the wedding was planned for May, not January. I had a week-long training for work in Florida the same week as they moved the wedding too. I wasn't sure I'd be able to move flights around and had to pay a $200 change flight fee, but got things worked out. Yet in the midst of trying to figure out plane tickets and travel plans, I had gotten bumped to groomsmen, which I was and am still chill with. So the Friday before this Saturday wedding, I'm supposed to fly from FL to TX to Nashville to Chicago, and a friend was gonna meet me and drive me to a small town about 4.5 hours south of Chicago. All told 3 flights and a long car ride, but I should be there by the morning of the wedding. So the Friday afternoon of these travel plans come, I'm ready to leave. The tux has been picked up and I'm on my way to my first flight from FL to Texas, but on the way to the airport I get a message telling me the flight would be delayed. No big deal. I had a 1.5 hour layover and just my carry-on, I'd be fine. About 20 minutes later they message me again. This time to let me know the flight was gonna be delayed for much longer. I call my buddy and let him know. He says no worries, just do your best to get here. So I find a travel agent. They tell me the flight I'm on is still heading over to Nashville, but my connection to Chicago will have left and they'd be willing to rebook me. So I find the earliest flight I can from Nashville. It isn't until 6:30 a.m. the next morning. So I fly to Texas, on to Nashville, stay the night. The next morning my flight is Chicago, then St. Louis, where my dad will meet me and whisk me to the church. The tux would be waiting there and I'd be able to get dressed and go right into photos. That night in Nashville I didn't sleep at all. Then next morning jumped on my flight for Chicago. Had a short layover, things seemed to be going well. I was going to make it on time. But then over the loudspeaker I hear flight 4STL has been cancelled due to plane malfunction. At this point I'm just about to give up when the ticket agent says another flight that's about to leave is open. I grab my bag and rush to the gate, get in line, and luckily it seems I'll be in the air on my way with a couple hours to spare. But we get stuck in taxi for over an hour. When the plane finally takes off, we are getting off the ground right when we were meant to be touching down in STL. It's a short flight, I think 45 minutes, but I lost a ton of time. I meet my dad in baggage claim and we race to the church. It's a 2.5 hour drive. We are leaving at 1 p.m. for a 3:30 p.m. wedding start time. I make it to the church at 3:15 p.m. I dress quickly, meet my bridesmaid and walk down the aisle. Stay up until 1:30 a.m. Tell the bride sorry I almost didn't make it. She asks, "What do you mean?" The whole time I had been telling my friend what had been going on. He never told his wife. She never knew how close I was to not making it, and I think it was totally the right call. TLDR, planes are not the best way to plan to make it to a wedding. But never tell the bride. I am a wedding planner who just got married this past month. I messed up the date on my own wedding day. Yup, I do this for a living and I missed that the date was wrong on months of emails. Turns out the bakery had made it a day early, complete with the gold painted pineapple topper, and had it at the venue before our post ceremony photos were done. Had I been the coordinator and not this bride, 1, this never would have happened, and 2, no way the bride ever would have found out.